And you mentioned, Malcolm, you attended Manhattan School of Music, and this was
Yes.
for your doctoral degree. Your thesis
That's correct.
was on Gregg Smith, and for more than 3 years, you would travel to Yonkers to meet with Gregg and Roz and really get to know them and to tell his story, to dig into his background. And I think that the wonderful piece that you wrote that was a tribute to Gregg talked about how there were times where he would talk about his experiences and you said your jaw would drop.
Absolutely. This project was, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. I mean, to gather with Gregg and be his audience and let him tell his story. It was amazing. And I recorded all of those interviews so I can go back and listen to them. But I feel so blessed and so fortunate to have come into this opportunity, and Gregg and Roz invited me so warmly into their home on dozens, hundreds of occasions now. And not only did we talk about music and talk about Gregg's life and career, but I feel like they have become a family. We have shared meals and attended concerts. But we were very focused. I was very focused in my work.
Malcolm's very focused, always. But he changed Gregg's life in those last 2.5, 3 years.
This was wonderful for Gregg to be able to do
because
this.
Gregg was at that point pretty much sedentary. He was in a wheelchair, and I would say to him, "Honey, aren't you bored?" "Oh no, I'm hearing music." And he meant in his mind. I mean, lots of times he was hearing something, that I was playing through the speakers in the living room, but other times he was that musical to the end and positive. But Malcom just, energized him in a certain way. And I think he was just so proud of Malcom. He knew how talented he was. Gorgeous voice. I mean, Malcom could go, he's only, 30, right?
32.
32.
Yeah, so the interviews were, the project, I should say, is a biography of Gregg's life and also a complete work catalog, which describes the pieces that he wrote, and they're separated by genre: choral music, solo vocal works, instrumental works, arrangements, as Roz mentioned, and canons, numerous canons, and many other
so many canons.
Categories as well. But the most interesting part, well, the whole project was interesting, but was when I sat across from Gregg and he talked about his early life. His career is pretty well documented through the Gregg Smith Singers and throughout the late 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But learning about his early influences, his father, who was a very brilliant man, and the death of his mother at an early age. And then subsequently, he had to move across the country and live with family members. But the influences that led him to be a composer, and that ultimately led to the formation of the Gregg Smith Singers in 1955. Over those interviews, when I was speaking with Gregg, it occurred to me that he was a triple threat as a composer, as a conductor, and as an educator and mentor. And if you think about the hundreds of choral singers, composers, conductors that Gregg influenced throughout his career, it is really quite extraordinary. Through the American Festival, Adirondack Festival of American Music, to the series in New York and across the world. It's really extraordinary.
And you used the word astounding. You said you were and continue to be astounded.
Well, as I perform Gregg's compositions and work on these compositions with my choirs, I am blown away by his genius and his use of canon and his use of harmony and text painting. And it's going to be a lifelong project for me. I mean, over 400 works. That's a lot of Gregg Smith to perform, so I'm looking forward to it.
Tell Tom about the children's music, because Gregg early on wrote for Texas Boys Choir, and Malcom has a choir.
Well, I have worked with children's choirs for most of my career, and when I worked with the Syracuse Children's Choir and Dr. Barbara Tagg, she programmed a number of Gregg's works for treble choir, for children's voices. And I would compare Gregg's writing for children's voices to Benjamin Britten, who also had just this affinity and this essence of capturing a melody that is perfect for a child's voice. And Gregg has so many works that children love to sing, and it's just incredible.